Hello and welcome back. So here we need to shut off these once a submission has happened. Okay. So in order for us to know that a submission has happened is for us to read this row and then check this right here. Now we can read that row just by doing what we are doing here. We get a query and then we run that query right here. Now that's one way to do it. Another way we can do it is we can create another function inside the tests model. That's a better way of doing things, shifting all the heavy lifting to the models. So let's try and go to the tests model, right? So just like we added all these functions, I can just add an extra function. Let's see if there's a function that reads or writes to the database. We actually have none, but that's not a big deal. So right here I can just say public function. I don't know what that is. So public function, and let's say get answered test. So you can put as many functions as you want here to avoid putting too much code inside the controller. So if it has to do with reading from the database, it's better it's in the model. So the choice is up to you how you want to create your content. So get answered test. Now what I need are two things here. I want the test ID and then I want the user ID as well. Those two things, that should solve the problem because that's what identifies this row, these two here. So all I need to do is let me activate my DB. I'll just say DB is equal to new database, and then down here let's just say DB query, because that query function actually originates from the DB. So here let's put a query and say select all from answered tests where test ID is equal to test ID and user ID is equal to user ID. Limit 1. Now don't put a $sign like I've done here, put a full colon instead. And then let's put a comma and let's put an array here that we're going to create. So the array will just contain these two guys here, no big deal. So array is equal to, let's do that, and let's paste those babies in there. But of course we need to add a few things here, inverted commas and fat arrows. Then I will copy this, put it there, copy that, put it here. Why is it all test ID? I made a mistake here, right? Instead of copying, I pasted. Okay. So there we go. So we have test ID, we have user ID in this array. When we put it there, that's good. And let's get the result here. I'll just say res is equal to, like that. Now, if there is no result, then we return false. Otherwise, if we say is array res, we're going to say return the first result, right? Res 0, like that. Okay, good. So all we need now is just get answered test from there. Let me come back to this. And let's say what do we do here? Saved answers, and let's change this one to what do we change it to? Answered test row. A bit of a mouthful there, but then we say get, but we're going to use tests because tests is the, wait a minute, is it correct that tests is the right model? Where did we instantiate tests? Yes, it's tests model. So that's good because that's where this function is. So now we need to know what test ID is. This one is just ID because that's the ID from the top there. And then the user ID, of course, is this one. Since we've used this so many times, we could have easily set it to a variable. That way we use a variable instead of having to run this all the time. That should save time, but we've already done it, so that's okay. Okay, so there we are. We have tests get answers, answered test row. So let's see what this will contain in the view. So right at, let's try at the top here, or anywhere where I have some PHP tags. This is inside the loop, not a good idea. So let me just add some PHP tags here for testing, and I'll just say show whatever is in here. Let's put a variable thingy there, and let's refresh. So as you can see now, it does return the row that we want. If that row isn't found, this will be equal to false. But what we're looking for is the submit. If this is 1, then we are good. So all we need to do is to check if this is not empty. So I'll say if not empty, this, right? Let's put an if statement there. If not empty, instead of just that row there, we'll put an arrow and paste like this. And this is the submitted. If this is not empty, then or you can just say if is set. Okay, if that is set, then we are good to go. And then we can say and as well. If it is set and the same item is equal to 1, then we're going to say submitted is equal to true. Otherwise, let's put submitted as false at the top here. Now, this thing we are doing here, we can easily do this from the controller side of things. That way we just have the submitted variable down here. The less processing we have to do in this view, the better. So I will cut this because this can be done from the controller. So outer here, let's go back to tech tests, and once we get this, we can actually use that information. So I'm going to move that as well to the top there. So let me just move it to here. And then I will do this. We still need this information here for other things down there, but if we can also use data right here, let me paste that, same thing here. Okay, good. And then if is set, yeah, this is going to be, no, we can actually check if that is set, no problem. So let me paste this here as well. Since now we are inside the, we are getting this from the data, so same thing there, and close it over here. Okay, so we assign a row to this. If it's false, this will return false, then submitted will remain as false. But if it's equal to 1, then submitted will be true. So that's good, which means here all we need to worry about is one variable called submitted. Okay, so let me do right here, if submitted, where is this? I'm looking for the input parts. So let's start with this one here. So here it says if, yeah, we can just put another if statement here. So we'll say if not submitted. So if things have not been submitted, then we'll leave this be. So let me duplicate that, put it there. Now we have a nice if statement, but we can have an else statement here. So let's put else full colon. And then instead of all this, all we really need is the value. So where is the value? It's right here, the answer. So copy. All we need to do is add a div instead of an input and paste that. Okay. So if I now refresh this, let's go down here, you will see that this is the answer right there. So I'll say answer, just so we know that's the answer here. Okay, so answer photosynthesis, that, yeah, it is working. Let's go next. Let's go last. Except this one we haven't dealt with, but let's make the saved answers disappear as well in a similar manner. So I'm going to copy this, if not submitted, which is here. So if things have been submitted, we don't need this part. So we duplicate the end if, move it there, and move things away. So we'll say if not submitted, that's when we see that. So let me refresh. So that is gone as well. This is just in viewership mode. Okay, so same thing here. We'll make these disappear and just tick the answer that was marked. So this will be a little bit complex, so let's reserve it for the next video. But otherwise, you see here it says this test has been submitted, which is good. And how did it know? Wait a second. Yes, what did I use here? Answered test row submitted. Oh, wait a minute. I already had this. Where is it coming from? Oh, there we go. So we already had this, actually. Wow. You know, I totally forgot that we had this at all. So we have two things that are similar now. We have the answered test row and we have the answered test row. Oh, so we're repeating ourselves here, actually. Interesting. Okay, so it's up to you. You can either delete this or you can remove the function we created here. I'd rather much go with the function, so let's remove this part here. It's completely unnecessary now because we're redoing it here anyway. So remove this. Hopefully that doesn't cause any errors, so let's try that. Refresh. Okay, everything seems fine. All right, so in the next video, let's deal with this part here, and I will see you then.